everybody. Welcome back to another Agency Success live stream at hosting.com. And I've got two great professionals here today from BugHerd to talk about this important topic, the hidden cost of bad client communication. Now, I'm going to let Richard and Stephen introduce themselves in a second, but this is a subject that I know, talking to our agency owners, often it's that thing I hear, this maxim that I kind of subscribe to sometimes, but then also I kind of, oh, that's probably not nice, but it's like business would be great without the clients. But that part of communication is so tough, back and forth. Things can get out of whack. So I'm glad you two have hopped on our agency success community to share this topic. But Stephen and Richard, would you two, we'll start with Stephen first, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, how you connect in with agency work.
Yeah, so Stephen, my background, I'm the CEO of BugHerd to start with. My background, I've spent my entire career, I guess, in let's go for internet advertising more broadly. So, really dealing from the very early days of, kind of transitioning or like helping non-technical people understand stuff that they didn't understand, which was the internet. And a lot of the times it hasn't actually really changed. You're still often dealing with kind of very non-technical clients, and we'll get into that a bit more. But yeah, a long time in agency world. Probably 7 years ago, I joined BugHerd. I actually bought into BugHerd. I had an agency previously. One of those agencies, so that agency, we were one of BugHerd's very first customers. I understood the pain point immediately. It's really, as I said, about kind of helping clients through something that they don't understand. But yeah, I kind of liked it so much that after I exited that agency, I did some consulting for a while, and then had an opportunity to kind of join BugHerd and buy in, and have done so because I know the problem very well.
Excellent.
Yeah. And for me, I'm Richard. I'm head of product here at BugHerd. My background started out in software engineering, but I worked for many years as a developer and then producer for Ogilvy or other digital agencies in both London and back here in Australia. Also done a lot of UXing and then sort of transitioned into product. So I talk to BugHerd customers on a day in, day out basis, but also I've lived it, that pain point of managing projects and trying to juggle resources, clients, budgets. It's a pain point I know well. So I came and joined BugHerd a little while after Steve. He sort of dragged me in. We've known each other a long time, and been fighting the good fight since.
Excellent. Well, that's a great diverse backgrounds from both of you, and thank you for bringing this. You both said pain points on client communication. Fully agree. I think those of you that are listening in, you're probably like, "Yep, me too." Probably even showed up for some reason you might have gotten, but how expectations can go all over the place and get mismatched. But why is this topic so critical in you all's opinion? This client communication part.
Yeah, I guess from my point, the thing around poor client communication, it's about trust, right? And everything in an agency, all the work that you do is about establishing trust, because from trust, you're able to do great work with clients. And the second that trust is eroded in some way, and communication is 90% of where that trust breaks down, I think. I just made up a number, by the way. But that's when you start to kind of run into problems, and there are a lot of hidden costs which we can touch on, and we'll touch on, but to those problems, and also to that communication breakdown, and everything from your profit gets hit to your team burns out a bit to clients not liking the work as much as they might like it if you have like a more positive relationship, to the client leaving. So all of those things can kind of come from a very basic thing, which is are we communicating effectively together?
Yeah. I'd add to that it has the knock-on impact on, it's not just the client that you're dealing with, but it's all the other projects that you have lined up, right? So if one clients blowing things out, giving extra feedback, deadlines are getting missed, it's all the other projects that you have lined up. It's juggling resources and things like that. But I think as a product manager, most of my job is understanding client needs, measuring client satisfaction, all that sort of stuff. And if I think back to my agency time, I don't think we really ever measured client satisfaction, right? So it's a real difference between a software business and an agency business. Even though in the agency business, your client is everything. You know what I mean? You're a services business. You're there to serve the client. So yeah, I think that difference to me is something why this topic matters as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. We work obviously with our community here with agencies. So there might be 30, clients they might be kind of working with from time to time. And it's one-to-one a lot, right? And then at hosting.com, we're talking about thousands. And it's so interesting to hear this because a lot of the problems are very similar, right? On scale to a more consumer type client versus a client who's like, okay, I'm going to start this project, $50,000 project or whatever. But I can see how, we're dealing with, let's say $30 a month versus, okay, that 50,000. And that's a big drastic difference in that where you get expectations out of alignment for an agency. And you know this really well, Stephen, in running an agency, that can be a huge hit on everything. So I just want to talk about that cost of getting it wrong and your thoughts on that, like how you've seen it gone wrong, how it can go wrong, what's really at play here.
Yeah, just to add to that thing, I've run agencies, in a big global group agencies, and I've also had my own independent agency. So we were, we grew quite fast. We got up to kind of 30 people pretty quickly. The difference between running at a group agency level where I was dealing with senior clients and I felt quite detached from, let's go with their feelings. It was probably the best way. So I was able to manage them quite effectively in a way of being able to say, all right, hey, the knock-on effect of you asking for this to be turned around tonight is, it'll have this impact on our team, or it'll impact this other piece of work, etc. And I had a lot more, let's say, distance for in that conversation, and so I was able to do it quite effectively. When I had my own agency, and those conversations, you had a larger client who was much more important to the total revenue that we had. I knew people's jobs were reliant on that relationship. I'd probably describe it as I wasn't quite as effective at saying no, and that actually had knock-on effect into my team directly, because I wasn't just able to manage them with the distance required to be able to I was like, just make sure sometimes the requests are not correct, are outside of the line. But I was saying yes too often is when I look back at that historically. And it was just that flowed into the cost of getting some of that communication wrong that I had, because it hit our team in terms of, the hours they had to work. It hit profitability because we were reworking things. We were, not making deadlines at certain times. It hit my relationship with the client. They were judging, because of those things were flowing on, they were then judging our work as not quite up to standard as it should have been. And a lot of it just came down to I wasn't managing that relationship as effectively as I should be. And that's me looking back at that historically. But yeah, and then, we repeat business drops and things. And I can talk later about how I managed to kind of fix that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to trust as well. So everything we're talking about here comes back to how much they trust and believe that you're going to be able to do the job that they're hiring you for, right? So Dee mentioned about the clients judging the work more harshly, or judging the work, sorry. I think they judge more harshly when there's that poor communication as well, right? They're going to be nitpicking. They're going to be calling out every single issue, like as BugHerd, we're a client feedback tool, right? So you notice in the projects that aren't going very well, there's a lot of feedback compared to the ones that are going really well, right? And it's really calling out every missed dot on an I or cross T, you know what I mean? Whereas when they trust you, the feedback's a lot more macro, if you know what I mean. And that again, ripples across everything. It goes across the whole schedule and knocks all your projects out.
And the same is true when you're managing a team. Like, I don't know if you manage a team internally, but the same is exactly true with your own staff, right? When you have a very strong relationship or with your managers or anything, when that relationship is strong, people will step away and give you space, right? If they trust you. Well, the second that trust is not there, the micromanaging kicks in. And that's exactly the same in, a client relationship with an agency as it is, internally with people.
Well, I want to take a second and ask everybody listening, what's one of your frustrations? What's one of the key obstacles you hit with this conversation around client communication? I'd love for you to put that in the chat if you have a second. And just a reminder, if you have a question for these two, put it in the Q&A. But you said something earlier, Stephen, that really rang my bell. I was telling Richard when we were kind of warming up to this before we started the broadcast that for a microsecond, I was a freelancer. But you said something earlier, Stephen, that really rang my bell, because it was like the ability to say no.
Yeah.
I probably default as people pleaser, which isn't good when you're doing client services. You talk about communication and team going, what did you just promise? Why did you give away the bank to do this? I mean, that's something we can all resonate with, but I think I've seen so many agency partners in our community do that really, really well and not say yes to everything. But I know that's a big trip hazard for me.
Yeah. And it's very hard to do in relationships. And as I mentioned earlier, I found it much easier when it wasn't my client in the same way, and I wasn't quite as attached to these 5 people would lose their jobs if that if that relationship falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also like it's when the agency it grows a bit. Like Steve's talking about it from an ownership point of view, but like when you're the first, like I was a like PM producer, so you're a middle layer of the team, right? And when you're not the boss, but it's a small agency, like there is a lot of pressure to keep that client happy as well, right? And you haven't really necessarily got all the, I guess, scope to say no, like to push back, as an owner might. So yeah, it's another angle on that same problem.
Yeah, then you definitely get it at scale when you're like, somebody sold it, but have they relayed those vital information back down to the team? I want to ask, what have you seen as being the drivers of communication, client communication breakdown in you all's experience? What are those things that really cause those things to go awry? I know we talked about people pleasing a bit, but I just want to get you all's thoughts on what you've seen being the breakdowns for communication.
Can I go, Steve?
No, I'll let you go first.
It's the basics. Like it mostly comes down to the basics to begin with. Like you're not communicating consistently. You're like missing details. You're not following up on things. It's like that old saying, say what you'll do and then do what you'll say. And it's like, it's as simple as that. I think as well, because we're in technology, we assume that the client knows a lot more about what we do than they actually do, right? And especially with like non-technical clients, often like with web, so BugHerd primarily is a feedback tool for web development projects, right? You're building a website for a client or things like that. So, when you do this day in, day out, that you ask the client for some feedback, they've never given feedback on a website before, right? So like, what are they expecting? What are they don't even know what you want from them. And that happens all the way through the process, whether it's sending a Figma design over to get their input, like what do you want me to tell you about on that design? Like what, from brief right through to the end. It's if you're not carrying them through the process, communicating consistently, making sure they understand, that's a big part of where it breaks down. Stephen?
Went down to that, it's like silence. we were talking about this earlier in a support context, but the same is true from agency world. I remember where if a problem is occurring, let's say you get that email from a client, which is always going to come, something is on fire. Right? There is a problem. I have seen people. It used to be phone calls. People not answer the phone. Now, it's less phone calls these days because all the young people don't like that. But if you get an email or a text message or whatever the thing is saying, "Hey, there is something on fire," respond immediately. Like silence creates anxiety for people. And if you still can't solve the problem at the end of the day or at the end of the next day, just respond and say, "Hey, we're still looking into it." Update all the time, because that silence breeds anxiety, and anxiety erodes trust for people. And it's very, very important. And also from a development perspective, one of the things I certainly noticed, we used to do a lot of technical software development. We would do a lot of work and have very little visual output. And it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't understand software development that you've done a lot of work in those contexts. And so we certainly learned, again, just going back to regular updates, just get to the visual output very quickly, and so they could see progress. And because you're talking to someone who doesn't understand what you're doing, and that's the most important thing, is remembering they don't understand it. You've got to take them on that journey in a piece by piece fashion.
I think you really nailed that with the silence part, because, at hosting.com here, someone's coming with that fire potentially to support, and you may have to go chase the answer down, figure it out, but there's a time in between where someone's just sitting in limbo and that still working on it. And we just had a great example of this week, Cloudflare. Like, part of the internet broke, and I think they lead out in this client communication where they're sharing it. And I was just looking at their the CEO's blog post today, and I thought there was a section for you all that are developers that I was like, cool. They showed their math of what happened, but I was like, what a stellar example of communication, because it's down. Mm-hmm. I'm in panic mode, and silence is the opposite, right?
Yeah. I'll throw you a counter to the Cloudflare example being a great example of great communication. They were on it. They were quick. You could tell, because we use Cloudflare. We also use Heroku, which is a Salesforce company. They were the absolute opposite. So like Heroku, they went down. Their status page was hosted on Heroku, so that went down. Their support communications were on Heroku, so that all went down. And so they had nothing for, I think, about a day or two, literally nothing. And the inverse being Cloudflare, they had their status page hosted on a completely separate host. So if they went down and didn't touch it, they were active in their communication the entire time. They were down for about an hour or something. So it was like the complete opposite. But again, it's that silence is not golden. It's the opposite in this case.
Yeah, and the flow-on effect for us is that then we get to inform our customers, right? And so again, we're down. We put up a thing to say, "Hey, you can't, like BugHerd's not available. It's a third-party issue." But at least then we're able to tell them. And it's exactly the same in an agency context, or managing clients rather than customers. Is that if you don't know, you are sitting there waiting. Waiting for like update, refresh, F5.
And how we operate as humans is, in the absence of good communication, we start to make stuff up. But there's probably a realistic tone down in there, but we'll make things up and go to worst case scenarios and make the problem worse for sure.
Yeah.
So are you going to say something, Richard?
No, I was just going to agree.
A very basic thing is that, going back to the email example or messages, whatever, however you have that Slack, whatever the communication is just responding and saying, "Yep, I've got it. I'm looking into it." And you would be surprised how few people do that. They often get it, go into all of the work before just that one piece, and then again the constant updates. Still looking at it. Okay, hey, we think by the end of the week, etc. We do it through support, but it's exactly the same in an agency context.
Yeah. Well, a couple of people chimed in here in the chat, but I just saw the word, and it was the buzzword scope creep. Like that's one thing I've seen most every agency I've talked to eventually deal with one day or the other, scope creep. And so what do you think is behind all that there, the scope creep part from your all's perspective?
It's inevitable, right? Like it's going to happen. And I think it comes back to the very start of the project, really truly understanding the pressures of your client, the client's business, what they're trying to achieve. And you know, if you understand that, if you understand what their goals are, what their boss is asking them for, what they need this project to deliver for their business, you can set a better scope at the beginning with tighter requirements. And you know, the tighter those requirements, the more detailed and specific they are, the easier it is for you to say, we'd love to do that extra bit of scope. It's going to be a change request in another 10 hours. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, that's what you want to get. You want to get more business. Scope creep's actually a good thing as long as you can get paid for it, right? So it's how you set that out at the beginning, be really tight about it. And also, tell me if I'm rambling a bit, but I tend to do that. But like if you go back to like really clearly how you articulate the how you work, the workflow, the process that you're going to go through to get this result for the client. You know, having those milestones of what you're going to deliver when and what's in that. Like it's going to be, hey, the designs is going to be a homepage, three landing pages, a contact us form or something, right? If it's really clearly articulated the things that you get, there's always going to be scope keep around the edges, and you want to maintain the relationship, right? So you don't want to be like every single little thing is going to cost you more, but the things that are going to cost you time and effort and blow things out, or like rounds of review, always saying, you know, it's 2 rounds of review or it's 3 rounds of review. We've got a feature in BugHerd where you can set a deadline for feedback, which our customers love because they can say, okay, you need it done by next Friday. And that's the cutoff for the round of review. Anything beyond that is outside of that scope. So I feel like I rambled on a little bit there, but I could talk for days on that topic.
I think one of the most important things I heard, and you said a lot of great things, is it's inevitable. It's going to happen. We're going to run into things where expectations are mismatched. And I think I can't remember which one of you said it earlier, but you want to know progress is happening too. And being able to see that. So when we're building our house, I was out at the home site, every other day almost, because I wanted to see, plumbing's coming in, but that expectation I think we have as humans, clients, regardless, is like we want to know things are moving in the right direction. But do you have something, Steven, you're going to add?
I was just going to add to that. I think the analogy of building a house is very, very similar. Processes are very similar. You don't know anything about building a house, most likely. The process of like setting it all out. Now, obviously, what a builder does is they factor in risk. So the risk of the unknown. So when you're in an agency, you can charge in multiple different ways. And one of those ways, for instance, is time and materials, where I just say, I'll charge you for my time, and it will take as long as it takes to do, and I'm going to communicate with you effectively through that process. And that's a more maybe like agile style. Or there's the, hey, I'll give you a guaranteed, quote upfront, and it'll take me 6 weeks and to build this website or etc. And I'm going to factor in all of the unknowns that I don't understand about your business. So, to Richard's point, I'm going to try and understand those through a lot of conversations, and so I can de-risk this kind of fixed quote. And then, we're going to say, okay, well, maybe I've got to add 3 times the amount of hours that I think it would actually take in order to factor in all of the unknowns that will come in. But, so you can charge in multiple ways, and the processes are quite different, but they're very similar to building a house. But a lot of that, it is still going to happen. Sometimes being able to go back and say, hey, we need to charge you more for this is still super important. And going back to where we started, like the trust component to that is, if you have a good relationship and you're communicating well and there is trust, that conversation is often well received. if there is breakdowns because you're not just doing the basics, as we said, communicating those updates, plumbing's coming in today, etc., and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we've got to charge you, an extra 40 hours on this piece of work, that doesn't get received very well at all. So it's again one of those kind of flow-on effects of not getting the very basic parts right throughout the whole process.
I'm so glad you mentioned several times trust, because, when I'm thinking about this, and I've spent my career, really in communications, but underlining everything. But you go like, trust is maintaining good communication. That's just two parts of the equation. So I'm so glad you came back to trust. Well, I don't want to digress too much. I want to get to some other topics we had talked about, but is what actually fixes communication? What is good communication when we're talking about these clients?
It's definitely Rich. You can start there.
Paper, rock, scissors.
Wait for you to step in with that. Like I mentioned it a minute ago, but like really understanding the business. So like there's an agency here in the space we're in that I was chatting to the other day, and they got a great process. They spend upfront multiple sessions with the client before they've even like looked at the brief, right? To really understand who they are, what their problems are, what the pressures are on that business. Go and read the annual report if there is one available, and understand what the CEO said the objective is for the year. You know what I mean? Like understand the broader context that your brief that you're getting it lives within, so that you can solve their problem for them that they're trying to solve for their boss. You know what I mean? Like do their job for them. So I think like that empathy is the start of it all, right? And if you think about it, and you can come into that first sort of presentation where you're pitching your solution to the brief, that really just like talks to the last conversation they had with their boss is like, hey, where are we getting on this objective? Like your job's half done, right? You're just showing they can trust you to understand what they're trying to achieve here. I think beyond that, get the basics right. You know what I mean? Like we've talked about it again and again, but it's so simple. It's just communicate clearly, honestly, regularly. Get in front of bad news. Just make sure they've got visibility of what's happening, what's coming, how the process works. Over communication is always better than no communication at all. Steve-O, anything you add?
Let's go back to a bit you added at the start there about understanding clients, because understanding the client's business. Like I'm lucky enough to also have worked on client side as well. And when I first did that, and it was with a very large business, but having been in advertising or kind of marketing services in this component to it, going client side made me realize, and I remember, for a senior woman I worked for saying to me, "Oh, now you see how much other stuff we have to do, rather than this kind of tiny sliver that you guys think is like super important." She didn't say it in exactly those words, but it was that, and it was because there's this huge other context to their business and their job. And delivering these marketing services or websites or advertising campaigns or anything is just this kind of tiny component to that. And that was very enlightening to me. And to understanding that, to Richard's point, I think good communication starts at the start. It starts with the onboarding of the customer. It starts with getting to know them and their business and their boss's needs, or as I said, the strategic needs of that business, and then being able to communicate in a way that it just gives, as Richard used the words, do their job for them in a way that it just gives them what they need and they can forward it to their boss, etc. Like, that does, it sets the benchmark for how to work together moving forwards.
Yeah, and there's one thing I'd probably add to that as well. It made me think of is when communicating with the client, like think about it as you're not just writing to the client, but you're writing to the client's broader team or the people that your client needs to then communicate that progress onto, right? So if you're sending them a project update, keep it tight to the point, not overly internal language and things like that, so they can literally just go, oh, Steve's just asked me for an update on where this project's at, like copy, paste, send. You know what I mean? Because it's just that pointed and clear. Again, all those little things build up on the trust that is core.
Yeah, and it's rebuilt. You rebuild trust not through just like a big, oh my God, I'm sorry, but everything will be better now. It's rebuilt through consistent, behaviors of doing the right thing, doing those basics right. It's like the foundations of the house. You've got to have a good foundation upon which you can build a house. If the foundation is rocky for whatever reason, none of the things that sit on top of that are going to stand up for very long.
Well, this is excellent talking about client communication. I want to drill down a bit because the work you do at BugHerd is really the work our agencies are delivering every week. It's websites where this client communication back and forth, scope creep, all the things we talked about can come in. Would you tell us a little bit about BugHerd? And while there's sharing this answer, be sure you put a question in the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom app, and we'll field some questions. But tell us a little bit about BugHerd, problems it's solving, and some of those things back and forth of that BugHerd and what you built helps kind of keep that communication, that trust, that empathy going along the way.
So I can talk to this because certainly, as I mentioned, we were one of the earlier customers of BugHerd. This is more than a decade ago now.
By the way, I love that because a lot of founders will say, "I created this for my own need." You're like, "I was a customer.
Yeah,
I'm a believer."
I mean, this was in Melbourne, and so through the act of good customer communication, I got to meet the founders and having conversations with them about our needs. But really, what BugHerd is it's I guess it started as a developer tool capturing bugs. We're a bit more than that now. It's about kind of capturing feedback. We use web feedback through the web development process from clients. So really think of it like sticky notes on a website. Your client, non-technical client, can just go point and click at the things that the changes that they want made, and we capture a whole bunch of technical data that the production team need to fix that. So we get a screenshot, we get what browser they're in, we get screen resolution, all things where there's a lot of back and forth that goes on, like a fire hose of communication that often disappears off into email. Really, the client just looks at their website, requests changes, the team get all of the information they need to fix it, and we just kind of give a management process to that makes it much easier. And I think going to why that mattered or what the pain point was is that every project, in my experience, even if you have designs all signed off and it's all nice, and the client goes, "Yeah, I want that," those designs are never going to render exactly the way they render, like exactly like that design in the browser. And then you've got 4 or 5 different browsers, and you've got mobile, and you've got all of that. And so a client often doesn't understand that it's not going to look like that once you hit the browser. And so once it hits the browser and they start to be able to click around and explore the thing, that's when you get this fire hose of email coming in going, "Hang on, I didn't think this would work," or what, like this button's not working, etc. And you spend a lot of time just going back and trying to go, "Well, hang on, what page were you on? Oh, hang on, that's just a normal way because that browser doesn't do this type of thing." And so going back on, we just take that pain away and make it a much, much simpler process. So again, I was rambling a bit there, sorry. But
Look, to bring it all back together, BugHerd is really making it easy for non-technical people to give feedback on websites. So you can share a link with them. They click through and give feedback, like Steve said, on the actual website, pinning the feedback on that page, and then we organize it into this sort of best practice UAT process. So it gets you out of spreadsheets, out of the emails. It's all in a nice board that you can assign things to people or integrate with. If you're using ClickUp or Asana or Monday or any Jira, any of those, it all tightly integrates as well. So it's all about making that process as painless and chaos-free as possible.
Just going to write that down, Rich. That was good.
Yeah, you should write that down.
Well, we are recording, so we got it for you.
Yeah, we'll go back on this.
By the way, all these conversations we have with agency success are posted to our YouTube channel shortly afterward for hosting.com. So, and if you sign up for this webinar today, you'll get an email when the replay is available. So it's all preserved for you all and for everybody else too.
Perfect.
So we've got a couple questions as we continue to talk. Post your questions about client communications, BugHerd, feedback, all those things. That's our topic today. Let us know. But I'm just kind of curious, Richard, what is your favorite feature that you all have? And I want to ask a different one. What's that one feature you're like, why doesn't more people use this? Because I'm always curious to ask software and especially product people, because you build something because you're like, I understand, I'm walking in their shoes, just doing what you said earlier, being empathetic, walking in their shoes, understanding the story. And you're like, where are they? Why aren't they using it? I can put the big button right here, but they're still not using it. So there's a two-part question there for you, Richard, and Stephen, if you have something after, please chime in.
Yeah, I think favorite bit is like the thing that is unique to BugHerd, which is really like BugHerd lives on your website and you pin the feedback directly onto the page. There's other things out there that'll snap a screenshot and send it somewhere else, but because we pin an element on the page, like it's visible, it's easy to see for if you've got multiple stakeholders giving feedback, they can already see that one's been captured and not give the same piece of feedback over and over again. So I think that's sort of, I'd say that the secret sauce, the key feature to me that has been really the thing since Steve was a customer back in sort of 2010, 2011. In terms of like features that people don't use, that's a tricky one because as a product manager, I make a lot of features. But for me, I think, I think maybe like we've got a feature that's like members only comments, like it's for your team to have conversations around a piece of feedback without your client noticing.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, so that one I think like should be used more.
Yeah.
Steve, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, if you look around at some of the other tools, like video feedback is a thing that it is all of the things that kind of do what we do. Have this idea that you can record video over the page. 99% of the tasks that are created in our tool. So we have this video feedback idea. You can record yourself, talking over the page and scrolling through the page and things. But 99%, you click the button, you select the thing you want to leave feedback on, and you leave feedback there. And so it's very interesting. You just don't know that was going to be the output of that because everybody says they want it. And I'm guarantee you when they go looking for, or comparison solutions, video feedback is one of the things. Like it comes up in demos and stuff, but it's just not a thing that people want because the other part of it, which is just pinning, your request to the part of the web page, just does the job as effectively as is needed.
Well, I was thinking,
and you don't have to hear your own voice. I think the key thing there is you don't have to hear your own voice on a video. That's why people don't use it.
I think Richard, you're talking about the members only feature. I think that could be so invaluable because I was thinking one compelling reason to use software like BugHerd is all of that in one place and kind of a paper trail. But when you added that members, your team specific, then it's not, that part isn't over here in Slack or whatever other thing too. You've got it in one place where you can have this full conversation. Something goes wrong. Expectation isn't met. You can come back, you can see your team view and the client view. So I think that's a huge plus. I didn't even think about that side.
Yeah, and we touch all of that comment stream. It's on the task itself, which remembering is kind of visual. I won't go into a live demo.
Yeah. Go to bugHerd.com and check out the demo.
It just leaves a piece of feedback and all of their comments, you'll back and forth with them. Everything is just attached to that task, so they can see it. It doesn't. It's within the context of the task itself, so it doesn't get lost. It doesn't disappear into other bits. And what do they want? All the client cares about is they've left a piece of feedback or made a request, and has that thing been received? Is it in progress? and when will it and then when will it be done? That's kind of the extent of the interaction that they're looking for in a lot of ways.
That's excellent. Well, there's a couple of questions that came in, so I'll share those with you. Deborah asked, how do you handle too many people involved on the client side and they can't agree amongst themselves what their goal and message is? So obviously BugHerd allows multiple people to give feedback, but I'm curious, you probably see this a lot in the system. How do you all think about how to handle too many people involved in a project?
Do you want to go first, Steve? Or?
I was thinking, going back to Rich touched on the importance of process and explaining process effectively up front. One of parts of process is saying, we have there needs to be a kind of single client for us to interact with on that. So that client's job is effectively to synthesize all of that across. There's got to be a project owner really on the client side, and you're interacting with them, and that client's job is to synthesize all of that. So, I mean, we talk a lot this idea of a main client versus just general people leaving feedback is very, very common. But I think the best way to answer that is like process explaining up front. This is how we work. We will work with one person. That person needs to synthesize. Like if there are areas of debate, you have to work that out and then come to us with a singular view of that. Because otherwise, to communicate clearly, what will happen is we will miss this deadline. We will, the flow-on effects are X, Y, or Z.
That's so key. I can see that fully as one person, point of contact, decision maker. Even if there's a lot of comments coming in through BugHerd, there's somebody that needs to like ultimately say, this is good. Because that's where you get into that scope creep. And then also on the agency side too, I totally see that, but I kind of assume that, but that's a good point. Richard, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think it's also how you kick things off, right? So if there's lots of differing opinion on how something should be talked about in terms of the messaging or positioning on the website, to me, that's a bit of a signal that at the start of the process, it really wasn't clear what the objective here was from the client's point of view, like not just the client, but the client's broader team and business, right? So the more you can understand about their broader business to begin with, that may have come out as a bit of a thing, if you're having a workshop about what are we trying to achieve here and whatever, and no one in the room can collectively agree on what the objective is or how you should talk about the thing, that's a bit of a flag on the play that you might have addressed earlier. There's also another thing in with BugHerd that I like to say is that not all feedback is necessarily something that needs to be actioned, right? Especially when you have a key stakeholder or key client, and then you have a bunch of other stakeholders. It might be legal, it might be, other leaders in the business that are all contributing, because, the new website for the business is for the whole business. Everyone's got an opinion, right? But I don't know if we can say this, I'll say it anyway, but in Australia, we say opinions are like arseholes, everyone's got one. So in how you manage that feedback, it's like, what are you picking out of that noise as like the sort of key points here, and that's what should be done, versus just someone just wanting their opinion to be heard in the project. I think there's something in the chat there I saw as well that Jason mentioned it. Respond in one voice is what he usually says. I think that's a great sort of point.
I think that's a great bumper sticker. I hope BugHerd has a t-shirt or something. Not every piece of feedback needs to be actioned. Like, it's not all created the same. So you're just going to get a lot of feedback using your old software, but not everything is something to take out and do. So that's excellent. Yeah, and thank you for sharing Jason's comment. Thanks for Jason for putting that. Respond in one voice is what he usually says. Okay, next question. And by the way, as I ask this question, if you have more questions for Richard and Stephen, please put those in the FAQ button, or the Q&A button on Zoom. Thinking back to software now, FAQ page. Okay, Anonymous says, what other tools do agencies typically use alongside BugHerd?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
You go.
definitely. Yeah, you go.
Look, the most common ones are like your project management tools like Jira, Asana, Monday, things like that. And then from a design point of view, Figma. Like Figma's basically the whole game. Then it gets a bit more nuanced when it comes to the actual web technologies that they're using, whether it's WordPress or Shopify builds or HubSpot pages like that. That sort of spreads out a lot. But yeah, primarily it's the project management tools. So we have integrations with basically all of the project management tools. And nice thing about with having BugHerd is you don't need your client to be in your Asana or your Monday or things like that. We can be this. What was that?
Don't ever ask your client to create a Jira ticket. It is
Yeah, they don't want to be in
all
there.
communication. Don't do it.
But so we sort of act as this like separation layer almost between the where the team, your project team, is like actioning the work and where all the opinion and feedback and sort of conversation is coming in from the client. So you can triage it and only send across the things that actually need to be actioned by your team. So the devs stay focused on the actual work at hand, and you sort of are sort of managing all the rest of the conversation. It also means you don't need to copy paste stuff from client emails or out of spreadsheets and then go and create Jira tickets and create Asana tickets and things like that, which as the client facing person, whether it's a project manager or account exec or whatever, you end up copying the brunt. The developers don't have to do that. They're just like, give me the work I need to do. You're the one that has to like parse all this email and spreadsheets and then turn that into something that the developer won't just throw back in your face and say, I need more detail on this, which has happened a lot. But Steve, you were going to say something?
No, I just made the joke about Jira. It's surprising how many people still ask clients to fill in a Jira ticket, and Jira is not a place you want clients to go. And again, going back to, they just want to make a request, point at the thing on the website, ask for a change, or report that this blue is not the blue that I thought it would be, and then make sure that has been received, is in progress, and done. Again, the developer needs a whole bunch more stuff for that, and that's where the client can't fill in that because they don't know how to answer the question about their browser, like what browser they're in exactly, or exactly what kind of page of the many website parts of the website they're on. So yeah.
Well, excellent. If you all have any more questions, we've got a couple more minutes. Post those in the Q&A. But I want to ask you too, what new exciting things are you looking forward to or doing or working on with BugHerd that you want to share?
So what we're working on right now is some AI sort of assistance in the product. I know so it's pretty hot right now, but we've sort of held off to sort of really find the useful use cases that we can try and sort of make the most of. So a big one there is similar feedback detection that we're working on at the moment. So that will basically tell you, hey, these comments, whether they're on completely different pages or like whatever, are about a similar element, and the client's talking about a similar thing. Pull those together, and you can assign them all to the same person or merge them into one ticket, or basically trying to see where AI can help us make you more efficient in getting through all that, hundreds of comments that the client has made, and get it through the process to be actually worked on. So that's sort of our main focus at the moment. Steve, you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think also beyond that, people here may or may not be aware of the idea of kind of MCP servers. So basically allowing the developer, for instance, to use BugHerd within their own workflow a bit more effectively. So imagine an idea where a client has reported, these 5 things. Rather than having to kind of go into BugHerd to get that, they can be in, let's say they're using Cursor, which is one of the development tools, or Visual Studio. They can get, basically via an API, effectively get our like those tasks into BugHerd. That the LLM can then suggest, or the AI can suggest the fixes to those tasks as well, because these are, they might be quite small things. They don't require a lot of time for the developer. So the AI can suggest fixes, and then the AI can make a pull request or like push a PR to actually make the change, so that effectively you can create an end-to-end system that relieves a lot of the the lower end work that the developers are doing, without them just having to oversee it, without having to do as much of the kind of manual work around that.
Excellent. Well, if people want to take a next step, learn more with BugHerd, what do you all suggest?
Free trial. So we're a self-onboarded, very light. I mean, we will help you if you need help, but most people don't. It's a very simple product to get started. Just bugherd.com. Click the free trial link. It'll take about 2 minutes to get up and going. And the magic moment for us is when people create a task on there. It'll take you to your website, and you'll pin a thing, and that's the kind of aha moment. And it's a very quick process, and off you go.
Excellent. Well, anything else that we missed that you two want to share before we wrap up today?
Nothing specifically. No,
I don't think so. No, it's been a good chat.
Well, it's getting into the afternoon for me, but it's your morning, so you got a full day ahead of you. But Stephen and Richard from BugHerd.com, thanks so much for being on today, talking about your experiences with client communication, giving some really good tips and takeaways. And thank you all for being here today. Again, this is part of our agency success community. If you want to sign up for the next live streams coming up, go to myagencysuccess.com, sign up, and you'll be the first to know about the new live streams. Richard and Stephen, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday. It's my Wednesday, your Thursday, right?
Yeah.
So
the future's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. That's good feedback.
Everything gets better tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you too.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.